Greetings, everybody. This is Brother Jacob, and this is the False Prophet channel, where we get Islam destroyed and the false prophet of Islam, Muhammad, destroyed on a regular basis. In this video, we will be debunking the Muslim claim that the Quran is the eternal speech of Allah. After we finish with this video, it will be nothing left for any Muslim to say. So I want all of you Christians and Muslims alike to pay attention to this video. And for the Christians, you can use this video that I'm about to discuss as a witnessing tool for Muslims to win them over to Christ, okay? Because that's the purpose of this channel, to debunk Islam and to expose Satan. Now, without further ado, let's get right into it. We are about to read a hadith to you, and this hadith that I'm reading, it can be found on the IslamQA.com website. So the Muslims can't say it's not authentic, because the imams and the sheikhs of IslamQA.com, they even use this hadith to answer a question that someone had left them. So now, without further ado, let's read it. Imam Ahmad narrated from Abdullah ibn Amir, may Allah be blessed with him, that the messenger of Allah, blah, 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 said, fasting and the Quran will intercede for a person on the day of resurrection. Fasting will say, O Lord, I kept him from his food and desires during the day. Let me intercede for him. And the Quran will say, I kept him from sleeping during the night. Let me intercede for him. And they will be allowed to intercede. Now, the reason why I put emphasis on the word they and will, because it's all going to make sense in debunking the Muslim claim that the Quran is the eternal speech of Allah. Now, one thing that Muslims say, they tell us that the Quran is uncreated and it has always existed and it is an eternal attribute, or they will say is the eternal speech of Allah. So, and they will say it's the knowledge of Allah. It's his infinite knowledge. That's what they will tell us. But the problem in all of that is this. As you see in this hadith, and as you see, this hadith classed as Sahih. So it is Sahih, it's authentic, and this is a well-known hadith. As you see, let's focus on what the Quran will say. As you see, the Quran is pleading with Allah. And the Quran will say, I kept him from sleeping during the night. And then it asks Allah for permission. It says to Allah, let me intercede for him. And then it goes on to say, and they will be allowed to intercede. Now, that creates so many problems. The first problem is, if the Quran is the eternal speech of Allah, like Muslims claim, then why would Allah's eternal speech have a mind of its own? And why would the Quran, Allah's eternal speech, be asking Allah for permission? Now, how does that make sense, Muslims? how can Allah's speech ask Allah for permission? So what we have here is Allah asking Allah for permission. But Allah is supposed to be all powerful. The speech of Allah is supposed to be divine, a divine attribute of Allah himself, the knowledge of Allah himself. So how can the Quran be the speech of Allah and at the same time asking Allah a question? Now this creates a huge dilemma and a problem for the Muslims, because either they are going to admit that Allah has a multi-personality disorder and that he is schizophrenic and he's just talking to himself, like when they try to make mockery of the Trinity, when they say, if Jesus is God, then why is God talking to himself? Because they don't understand the Trinity. But they deny the Trinity. So they can't say to us that Allah is speaking to himself within a Trinity. That won't work in the Muslim doctrine. So it's either, but yet they are still left with that, what I'm saying, as one of the options as to why it has Allah holding a conversation with his own eternal speech. So the Muslims have to explain to us. So either it's A, Allah is schizophrenic and he is communicating with himself and asking himself for permission, or it's B, like what I'm saying, the Quran is not the eternal speech of Allah. Because as you see, it says the Quran will ask Allah for permission. Let's read it. And the Quran will say, I kept him from sleeping during the night. Let me intercede for him. So even when it says, let me, when you say to someone, let's say you're knocking at the door of someone's house and you say to them, the person behind the door, if you say to them, hey man, it's me, that means you have made it, you have took ownership of yourself as someone different from anyone else. So when you say me, you have separated yourself from the person at the residence who comes to the door when they hear you knocking at the door. So here you have the Quran saying, I kept him from sleep during the night. Let me. So here, that's proof in itself that the Quran is not Allah. It has nothing to do with Allah. It's different from Allah. It is not the eternal speech of Allah, because it clearly said, let me intercede for him. So the Muslims, they can't even now when I look at it, they can't even say that Allah was having a discussion with Allah. So we may as well erase that option that I gave them. I was giving them a way out, but we got to erase that, because now as I look into it more deeply, and thank you, Holy Spirit, it says me. Like the example I use, if someone is at your door and they say, let me in. When you say me, you make it your personal ownership of yourself. You are different from the person that you are asking something of. Okay? So I could end the video right there, and it's nothing that the Muslims could say, but we shall continue. Now it says, now the most obvious thing is it asked Allah a question. Okay? So that's obvious that it's not the eternal speech of Allah, because Allah is supposed to be all powerful according to the Muslims. So why would Allah ask Allah for permission? And we've already showed you that it said me, which separates it from Allah. Okay, now let's read the ending part. It says, and they will be allowed to intercede. another nail in the coffin right there, because it says, and they will be allowed to intercede. So, Muslims, are you telling us that Allah is allowing himself to do something? If you are going to say that the Quran is the eternal speech of Allah, well, how is Allah allowing himself to do something? Does that make sense, Muslims? Does that make sense? Now, let's focus on the word they. When it says they, that is making an association of a different category. Because when Muhammad says, and they will be allowed to intercede, that's creating an association. Okay? Now, this is where it's really going to hurt the Muslims. Because the Muslims say you don't associate anything with Allah. But when it says, and they will be allowed to intercede, Muhammad clearly associates the eternal speech of Allah with fasting. Because who is the they that it's referring to? Well, if you read, it'll tell you. Fasting will say, O Lord, I kept him from his food and desires during the day. Let me, as you see again, that me word, let me. So again, fasting also uses the word me, personifying itself as different from Allah. It didn't say, let us, like the Muslims say the plural of majesty. It didn't say let us intercede for him. It says let me, which is a separation. Okay? Let me intercede for him. And the Quran will say, I kept him from sleeping during the night. Let me intercede for him. And check this out. And they will be allowed to intercede. So as you see, that they associates fasting and the Quran in a group because it says they. It puts the two in the same group or association. But if the Muslims want to say that the Quran is the eternal speech of Allah and still hold on to that, then they must admit that Muhammad committed shirk. So this is a huge dilemma for the Muslims, because if they still want to deny and everything that I'm saying, like I know most likely they will, because that's how Muslims do, because they under heavy, deep programming. Okay, so if they want to still stick to that format, that myth, that lie that they've been saying, that the Quran is the eternal speech of Allah, then they will have to admit in the same breath that Muhammad committed shirk when he associated fasting with the Quran, because it says, and they will be allowed to intercede. Now, that is shirk because it's associating something of creation with something that's uncreated. Fasting is a part of the creation. The Quran is supposed to be the eternal speech. So you're not supposed to associate anything with the eternal divine speech of Allah. That is shirk. So even in this hadith, we can add also, and thank you, Spirit, that Muhammad committed shirk when he associated the fasting with the speech. He said read it, and they will be allowed, as you see, and they will be allowed to intercede. So as you see, not only are we proving that Muhammad committed shirk, we also proving that there's no way that this can be the eternal speech of Allah. And we shall continue. Let's show you something else. You see where it says they will be allowed to intercede? That's a key word. That's a key word. because the word will is future tense. Now, this is really heavy what I'm about to say. The word will is future tense. Okay? So check this out. If the Quran is the eternal speech of Allah and is uncreated, when Muhammad said they will be allowed to intercede on the day of resurrection, that means the Quran is not uncreated and that it's still inside of a creation process. Because if on the day of resurrection it will intercede, that means it is prophesied to do something that it hasn't done yet. So it's still in a creation process. So the Muslims can't say it's uncreated, because it says, and they will be allowed to receive. And this is a future event that is supposed to take place. But if the Quran is uncreated, then how will it be doing something else in the future, like interceding? So that means the speech of Allah will be doing something in the future, but yet these same Muslims would tell us that it's uncreated. So that in itself is a contradiction. So it's no way out of this for the Muslims. They are clearly busted. And this is part one. I'm going to do a part two as well, because we're going to use the Quran. Because I know these Muslims, even though this is Sahih, and even though IslamQA.com uses this hadith, some Muslims will reject this. Some Muslims will say, well, I reject this hadith then. They'll say that. So we're going to do part two. We're going to go to the Quran and make the same argument. So with that, this is Brother Jacob signing out, and this is the False Prophet channel, where we get Islam destroyed and the false prophet of Islam, Muhammad, destroyed on a regular basis. Like, share, and subscribe, and leave your comments below. And this is Brother Jacob signing out, and this is the official debunking video of the false Muslim claim that the Quran is the eternal speech of Allah. So Christians, I want you to use this against the Muslims. Show them this hadith, and I guarantee you it will be nothing that they will be left to say. And with that, this is Brother Jacob signing out.